What's up, everyone? This is Jackson Rudolph with Team Paul Mitchell Karate and Century Martial Arts, here with my absolute favorite bow staff technique. This is going to be your butterfly spin, and then using the butterfly spin as a tool for your butterfly release. This concept, not the butterfly spin itself. The butterfly spin itself has been around for a long time. But this concept of using the butterfly spin to roll the bow off your thumb to gain more speed in a release is something that's relatively new. Back at the US Open in 1995, a woman by the name of Casey Mark, she's Casey Nash now, she got married, a lot of things happened since 1995, okay? But what she did was, at the US Open, she would do a hand roll one way, and she would throw the bow back the other way and catch it just like that. Has anybody ever seen this pose? It's like a really famous bow staff pose, like the Air Jordan of bow staff. Anyway, never mind. But in 1995, that was like the first release to ever be done, and it was insane. Like, no one believed that you could throw it up and catch it, which now is like child's play. But in 1995, huge deal, right? So then over the next 2 decades, people started trying to find ways to make it better. And they said, okay, well, if Casey can hand roll in one direction and throw the other direction, wouldn't it just be faster and more efficient to hand roll and throw in the same direction? Absolutely. They were right. You can absolutely hand roll and throw in the same direction to gain a little bit more flow and a little bit more speed. However, I come along and I'm like, okay, there's this butterfly spin technique, rotating the bow, switching from one hand to the other. And that would allow me to, instead of rotating the bow all the way over my hand and re-gripping it to make my throw, I could then do the same amount of rotation beforehand and go directly into that release technique without having to stop. And that's what's going to give you that flow that is necessary to comboing these bow tricks together, especially when you're using releases. I want you guys to look at the difference in speed. This is as fast as I can go with the hand roll. Pretty fast. But this is as fast as I can go with the butterfly spin. It maintains that high speed all the way through its rotation in the air. It comes back down. There's no loss of speed from throw to catch, and that's what is so vitally important to your flow in your bow staff routines. So here's the butterfly spin technique. I start with the bow in my left hand. Everybody give me a thumbs up. From this position, that left thumb is going to point thumbs down, and the bow is going to be coming directly behind my back. My right hand will then be up, and I'm going to drop that right hand straight down so that now my two thumbs are pointing in towards each other, but not on top of each other, just pointing in towards each other behind my back. From that position, my right hand will then take the bow out, so my thumb is now down, and I'll maintain that position as I bring the bow to the front and rotate all the way over so that my palm is facing up. This is where the butterfly term comes into play. My left hand will now come in on top of the bow, once again between the index finger and my thumb, making this butterfly formation. From here, my right hand can come off the bow, and my left hand can grab to complete the technique. Now, that seems like a lot of complicated steps. Let me break it down. Put your bow behind your back, take your right hand out, flip it over, switch hands. That's it. Just a little bit fancier way of switching hands by turning that right palm up, hitting this butterfly position, and then rotating through that way. Most common mistake that students make is that they'll rotate through here and then they'll just grab it. Make sure they're always hitting that butterfly position before moving on. Some students will have a tendency to put their left hand on the bottom instead of putting it on top, and maybe you were even taught to grab it on the bottom, and that's okay. The reason that I teach to grab on top is because for young kids, when they're performing this technique, if the left hand is on top, then the bow is rolling up into their hand and they can continue that flow. Whereas if the hand is on the bottom, the bow kind of drops down into the hand, and with little kids, you never want the bow dropping. You always want the bow staying up in the air. Dropping is very bad. However, if it's an older kid that just feels more comfortable grabbing on the bottom, or if that's just the way that you were taught and you want to keep grabbing it on the bottom, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just easier to teach to the little ones if you've got that left hand on top so you can continue the motion the same way. But otherwise, you won't lose any speed by grabbing it on the bottom, so don't worry about that. Now, to wrap things up, we'll show how that transitions into your release. Instead of rotating all the way to the thumb and then switching hands, that left hand will just stay back. The bow will rotate up onto that right thumb. These 4 fingers will curl in, and the bow will be pushed right off the thumb. You may be thinking, but Jackson, you did it off the thumb and it just did a half spin. What happened? Well, none of the momentum was there. Momentum is vital to being able to get speed in your bow staff releases. So if I start from here and take the bow all the way around my back and then rotate from there into my thumb throw, into my butterfly technique, that's when I can maximize my speed and I can keep a consistent flow even when the bow is going in the air. And that's the goal. The goal with this release technique is to make it so that if you have 5 or 6 releases in your form, it doesn't slow you down because every time the bow goes up in the air, it slows down. You want to be able to keep your form going at the same speed, 100 miles an hour, even when the bow goes up in the air. You might have to wait on it, but if you're having to wait on your bow to catch it, that's when you can be creative. Add in a spin before you catch it. Maybe add in a punching technique before you reach back the other way and grab your bow. Take some time, catch it in a position with a few style points. Maybe throw the bow up and catch it with your arms crossed like that. Give it some style. Remember, we're in the performance industry, right? You defend yourself with the basics. You practice the art with the basics. But the self-expression and the performance comes through these creative, new, and exciting techniques. And it's these exciting techniques that will increase your retention as well. When your students are learning techniques that challenge them and make them feel like they're doing something cool like a Power Ranger or a Ninja Turtle, that's what these release techniques can help you do, and retention will be much, much higher when your students are learning fun and exciting techniques as opposed to hitting themselves with side strikes all the time. This has been an MA drill on the butterfly spin and the butterfly release with Jackson Rudolph. Check out all of our other awesome MA drills, and don't forget to check out my weapons training program. I'll see you soon.